This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Kia ora, namaste, and welcome to Emergence News as we reflect today on a number of articles that are featured in the latest Share International magazine. And if you have not read the Share International magazine or you haven't gone online and had a look, just to let you know, it's a monthly magazine, features up-to-date information about the emergence of the new world teacher, Maitreya. There is always an article in there from a master of wisdom. There are expansions on esoteric teachings, and we talk about the ancient wisdom teachings frequently on this program, and they have come through a number of authors for the last 140 years, including Blavatsky, Helena Roerich, Alice Bailey, Krishnamurti, Benjamin Creme. Any other notable ones that I've left out there?
The Master Joel Cool as well, who Alice Bailey wrote the books for.
Absolutely. And there are also articles and interviews with people at the forefront of progressive world change. And we also have news from various UN agencies that come through the magazine as well. The magazine's published in several languages, and for more information, I suggest you go online and simply have a look at Share International magazine. There's plenty of information there. And John, Benjamin Creme, he was the original editor
of the Share International magazine. Yes, he was. And he started it, and he's been a driving force for this magazine for a long, long time. And even since his death, there's an awful lot of information that he put together is still being produced in the magazine because he had such a body of work and knowledge. So my favourite parts of the magazine is I go to the front and read the editorial and the master's message, and then I go to the back and read question and answers with Benjamin Creme. And that's still being provided today, even after his death. And it is where you get the most interesting snapshots of ideas and thoughts around the spiritual life.
Absolutely. Those questions and answers that come from everyday people throughout the world, Peter.
Indeed, yes.
And some of Benjamin Creme's answers are it's really fascinating stuff.
I know, that's right. It gets to the heart and soul of the problem, doesn't it?
And if you're looking for signs that there is something afoot, there's plenty of evidence in the magazine, isn't there?
There is indeed, yep.
What are you looking at today, Peter? Last time you were talking about an article regarding Jesus, the prophet that walked the Americas and the Pacific.
That's right, and we'll carry on with the article here and finish that piece off. And I advise people to perhaps look out for this book called He Walked the Americas.
And the author is?
Lucille Taylor Hanson.
Okay, so Peter's coming up with that in just a moment. And what about you, John? What are you looking at in the magazine today?
Well, Nigel, of course I'm back with the people, and we're going to look at what's happening in Europe. We're going to look at what's happening, fury at the loss of right to roam in England and Wales. Unbelievable, I can't believe it. And I've got Roger Waters talking to the United Nations Security Council.
I didn't realise you were a Pink Floyd fan.
I'm a Pink Floyd fan from way back. You don't know how old I am, Nigel.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I didn't realise Roger Waters would get on our program. There we go. Looking forward to it.
I'm getting big money from Roger Waters, okay?
This is Emergence News, and we are putting the spotlight on the Share International magazine today. And before we go to Peter, I just want to check with you, John. Since Creme passed, which was, 3-4 years ago?
Yes.
2016, I think.
Yeah, 2016.
Gosh, it's longer than that then. Since he passed, so who took over editor of the Share International magazine?
Honestly, I don't know, but I see this editorial from the magazine that we're looking at has got chief editor as Felicity Elliott. So I'm assuming that she's the one that's written the comments that we've been looking at today.
Thank you. All right, Peter.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Great. We're continuing the story now of Jesus' journeys in the 1st century AD through the Pacific Islands. And I'll just read again the last chapter that I left with on your last program. His journey began in Polynesia when he appeared in the first glimmer of dawn. In this war-torn land, he admonished the people to forsake their weapons and resolve old enmities. Ashamed that the first words from this God should be words of anger, they humbly bowed before him. From island to island, he spread his religion of love. When he left, the people were united. Today, they remain united by culture and tradition. From the islands, he sailed east to Panchachamac in Peru. There he found a jealous priesthood who plotted his death. But wherever he went, he was protected. He cleansed the temples and won the hearts of the people. Many mourned when he left to teach the warring tribes of Brazil. But gently he said, "If you had a herd of llamas upon a hillside, and one little lamb fell into a crevice, would you not go after him, still his crying? So to go and save my llamas, for that is my Father's business." Many years later, as ruler of Tolpan, he would return to Peru to renew his temples and teachings. From Brazil, he travelled north through the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, docking at seaports along the way. Here he received one of his many names, Huracan, where he calmed the winds of a deadly storm sweeping the land. At first the leaders were afraid of his power, but as he travelled, his legend grew. Merchants would tell of his works, traders would speak of the God who walked the earth, healing the sick and taming the fiercest beast. Soon his name was whispered everywhere, and many anticipated his coming long before his sandaled feet had touched the land. His trail ran north up the Mississippi to Canada. Today the tribes he saw remember his coming: the Cherokee, the Chippewa, the Cree, the Algonquin, the Dakota, Shawnee, Pawnee, and Choctaw, Asenia. Soon they see his long white robe with black crosses on the hem. Fondly they recall how he always blessed the little children. It is said that he knew 1,000 tongues, for everywhere he went, first he learned the language. In the cities he refashioned the temples, decorating them in rich colours and symbols of the 4 directions. He renewed as well their ancient ceremonies. Child sacrifice became infant baptism. Their pole dance became the sun dance, a ritual of penitence and expiration. He gave new meanings to the sweat lodge, the medicine lodge, the smoking of the pipe. He taught the golden rule, and our Father sung in a cadence that echoed through the temples. Do not kill or injure your neighbour, for it is not him that you injure yourself. Do good to him, thus adding to his days of happiness, even as you then add to your own. Wherever he stayed, he chose 12 disciples and carefully trained them in his new dispensation. The symbols and ceremonies remain deeply interwoven in Native American life, a daily reminder of his teachings. In the little village, he gave the people seeds he had bought and showed them new ways of planting. He told them, when the people are hungry, instead of making war, pray to the Father that your needs be provided. Every morning before the dawn star appeared, it was known that the healer would be silently praying, awaiting its light. This became his special star, and around its cycles he fashioned a calendar for the people. In the early West, the settlers knew the Indians would never fight when Venus lit the sky.
Peter, the prophet, the healer, the Master Jesus, his work isn't over, is it? He is working very closely with Maitreya.
Right. Yes, he is a sixth degree master of the sixth ray, and he appears often with Maitreya, and they still work together on many occasions, as when Christ overshadowed him in Palestine.
And what's one of the major roles for the Master Jesus as we enter the age of Aquarius?
Well, here's a Shohan, as I say, of the sixth ray, and so we have the passing out of the sixth ray as we have the incoming seventh ray now, and so he will, I guess, preserve a lot of the things that need preserving from the past. And
he has been based just out of Rome?
Yes, that's right.
Years.
He is in Rome, and he is going to try and revive the Christian church because it needs a bit of a stir in the right direction, I think, perhaps.
Well, that's no small task, John.
No small task, and as we've discussed previously, and I think we talked about it last week, there is a strong ability for the human ego to cling to belief, and I suspect that he's got his work cut out there, revitalising, reshaping the Christian churches. However, we also know that he comes with the blessing and energy of Maitreya. So there's an awful lot of energy for change flooding planet Earth at the moment, and I dare say that the Master Jesus will be using some of that to do his work with the Christian churches.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
Welcome back to Emergence News as we look at the point of view and the background information that is delivered by the Share International magazine. And now we hand over to John. John, you're looking at the power of the people's voice globally as in these times of tension and change.
Yes, I am, Nigel. We've talked about how difficult it is to get people to change, but actually one of Maitreya's predictions has been the voice of the people coming forward. We've talked about that the vanguard of the voice of the people is the young people, and we've kind of touched on that a number of times over the last years on this program. But I'm looking at a series of articles on the March 2023 Share International mag. And I'm going to start with Europe standing for freedom. In January of this year, 12,000 people marched in Strasbourg, France. And I'm liking French people in France even more and more, having read this magazine. Anyway, in Strasbourg, 12,000 of them got together in support of anti-government demonstrations in Iran. And in Paris, the Eiffel Tower was dramatically lit with the slogans saying woman, life and freedom, and stop executions in Iran. This was followed a few days later by an agreement at the European Parliament on a new package of sanctions against those driving the repression of peaceful protesters in Iran. And of course that's been driven by sanctions against women in Iran. And so that message has come out of Iran and is now going global. I'm going to also look at an article called Unity for a Work-Life Balance, and I'm still in France, which is why I'm not in the room with you two. And the fight for pension justice continued in France for the second time in January. Now, even mainstream media has been looking at this. And I sat and watched a mainstream media snip here in Christchurch, New Zealand, and it said that people were protesting in France because the pension age, the retirement age, had been raised from 62 to 64. And all of us in that room looked around and said, what are they complaining about? It's only 2 years, for goodness sake. But of course, there's more of a backstory there that I have for you. Now, the fight for pension justice. 1.27, so almost 1.3 million people hit the streets to protest against the inequalities in the pension system, particularly for women, and also President Macron's insistence on raising the retirement age. And as The Guardian reported, all major trade unions joined in a rare show of unity. And once again, the theme that's coming out of this is not only the voice of the people, but that many people are joining together who previously have not. And that is surely a sign of the avatar of synthesis shining its light down on our little planet. But anyway, both those trade unions and Macron's political opponents have referenced a report by an independent pension advisory council disputing his claim that the financing of the pension fund will go into deficit in the next few years. And in fact, a socialist mayor of Paris stood up and accused the government of shame-faced lies for arguing that pension change was necessary for fiscal reasons. Now, resonating with the reasons for protest in the UK, the protests were also about working conditions, and a lot of French people feel that working is more and more painful. It's not that they don't want to work, they don't want to work under these conditions. And this has come through the BBC and also The Guardian. And that's the theme we're hearing from the UK as well. So people are saying, I don't not want to work, I just want a fairer slice of the pie. And of course, that's picking away at oligarchy's share of the pie.
And if anybody's read Benjamin Krem's books over the years, they'll be familiar with the fact that he's predicted that we're going to be moving to a 3 or 4 day a week, and we'll have more recreational time available. It's not a new concept, but I'll tell you what, when you're on the job market, which I was recently, it wasn't just my age that was a bit of a barrier. It was the fact that I was wanting to work 4 days and not 5.
And employers weren't impressed, Nigel?
Well, I did find an employer eventually that have made adjustments to accommodate me, and they're going to get good service out of me for that, because I'm really impressed that they were open to the concept, because it's still a new concept, the 4 day working week.
No, they've done some research in, I think, Iceland, of all places, a couple of years ago, and across private enterprise and government organisations in Iceland, they went to a 4 day, and I'm working from memory here, a 4 day working week. And they discovered that sick leave use went down, productivity went up, engagement went up, happiness at work went up, and it permeated right through their community. So in Iceland, they have proven that people working less are actually better value. Happier. But anyway, let me continue with this really contentious headline. Fury at loss of right to roam in England and Wales. Now, this is staggering when we think about our life in New Zealand here. January this year, a High Court case in London saw a surprise victory for landowners and an end to wild camping on Dartmoor, the last area where this was possible in England and Wales. Now, the rules of responsible wild camping have been very simple and been in place for decades and decades, and they are pitch your tent away from the road as the light fades, no open flames, and leave in the morning without a trace. There's no need to seek permission first, and it was always free. Since the ruling, there is still access, but to restricted areas only. And that's because the Dartmoor National Park Authority is funding that from public money. So not only is the wealthy landowner squeezing the ordinary person out of the beautiful parts of Britain, but to get any access at all has to be funded from, here we go, public money. Right. Now, this has spurred a campaign for a new Right to Roam Act. And on the 21st of January, my favourite person in Great Britain, George Monbiot, claimed that this was the moment. We need to start to reclaim our place in the land. Currently in Britain, only 8% of land is accessible to people in general, severely restricting contact with nature, its health benefits, and the sense of stewardship that brings. And in fact, one farmer has commented and said, the privatisation of shared public spaces, be they school playing fields, ocean or national parks, tragically undermines the fabric of our society and takes us one step closer to breakdown. Look, living in New Zealand, I just find that staggering.
Yeah.
That only 8% of England and Wales is accessible to the public.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Mind you,
Isn't
we only
it?
checked out about our position in New Zealand, haven't we?
I tell you what, if that sort of stuff started happening in New Zealand, there would be marches in the street. All right.
That's the consequences of the class system over there.
Yes, isn't it? And of course, there's some staggering numbers coming out of Scotland about how much of Scotland is privately owned, and it goes back to the days of the clan chieftain who owned all the land, and the rest of the clan only worked for the chieftain of the clan. So apparently, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but most of Scotland is owned by a few people, and a lot of farmers in Scotland are only renting the land. Anyway, I want to finish off with an article entitled "Agree to a Ceasefire in Ukraine Today." And this is Roger Waters from Pink Floyd fame, as you pointed out, and he spoke to the United Nations Security Council. Now, we've talked about the United Nations Security Council before, and we've discovered that 5 of the 6 biggest arms-selling nations on this planet are in the United Nations Security Council. So Roger Waters is speaking to them, and he wants them to do something about Ukraine and Russia. Now, just recently, the Russian member on the United Nations Security Council, so the individual representing the nation of Russia on the United Nations Security Council, was recently voted as the rotating president, which apparently they rotate through every now and then. So currently, excuse my cynicism, the president of the United Nations Security Council is Russia. Okay, anyway, Roger Waters.
Oh,
I've got a couple of clips here of just things he said. He said the voiceless majority is concerned that your wars, love that term, Roger, your wars will destroy the planet that is our home. Please reassure us that that is not your vision, or there is no good outcome down that road. He goes on to say the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation was illegal. I condemn it in the strongest possible terms. Also, the Russian invasion of Ukraine was not unprovoked. So I also condemn the provocateurs in the strongest possible terms. And he says there, that's got that out of the way. He goes on to say, we the people want universal human rights for all our brothers and sisters all over the world, irrespective of their ethnicity, religion, or nationality. One of the problems with war zones, Roger Waters tells us, is that in a war zone there is no recourse to the law, there are no human rights. And if we can believe the media and the reports coming out of Ukraine, there has been some appalling breaches of human rights. Anyway, he finishes with naming President Biden, President Putin, President Zelensky, USA, NATO, Russia, the EU, all of you. Please change course now. Agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine today. That, of course, will only be the starting point, but everything extrapolates from that starting point. Imagine the collective global sigh of relief, the outpouring of joy. We can stop squandering all our precious resources on war. I'm going to say that again. We can stop squandering all our precious resources on war. And as we've covered previously on this program, war and armaments are the biggest industry on this planet. Roger Waters, and I'm going to leave with him, he says we may even learn to cooperate with all our brothers and sisters and even save our beautiful planet home from destruction. Thank you, Roger Waters.
Thanks, John. Fantastic stuff. And as I said earlier, there is an article in each publication of Share International by the Master. And in the latest edition of Share International magazine, March issue, the Master talks about sharing for peace. Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Nigel. When a man shares, he grows. Little attention has been given until now to this simple truth. But many sharing comes naturally, as a matter of course. For others, however, the concept is alien and fraught with suspicion and pain. For these, what is theirs, almost by divine right, while to share is foreign and absurd. How then can the world move in the direction of sharing and redistribution, prerequisites for world peace? Whenever men look today, they see the results of their inability to share. Across the planet, millions starve and die. Countless others survive in misery and hopelessness and poverty, condemned to suffer from birth to early grave. Change will come, then, when men comprehend the reasons for their presence on earth. Then they realise that they are part of a vast evolutionary experiment, whose purpose is hidden to all but a few. When they recognise themselves as souls, part of the one oversoul, and grasp the identity of each with the other. When men understand that sharing is the natural order, that selfishness and greed are deviance from the norm, when to share is seen as an opportunity to grow.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.